Let's kick off our Dragon Ball FighterZ coverage with some of the flashiest abilities ever seen in fighting games. These are all the super moves already announced for Dragon Ball FighterZ and how to perform them. Starting with the bad guys, Frieza here has a lot of supers to go over, but let's start with his most traditional ones. First we have Death Ball, which only consumes 1 bar of super. You do that by doing a quarter circle forward, followed by the right bumper or the right trigger. For Death Ball, Frieza jumps in the air and throws a ball of death towards the ground. It seems like a risky attack to use on an opponent that is jumping, unless you're super close to the opponent himself, since it's a downward attack. Up next, Frieza's super that spends 3 gauges of meter, we have Nova Strike. Now, I'm sorry about this poor quality footage, but this is actually the only time I've seen Nova Strike in any type of footage. You do this by doing a quarter circle backwards and hitting the right bumper. Just like the anime, Frieza envelops himself in a barrier and charges at the enemy at 100% full power. Next up, a move that is titled after a Frieza quote, "You should be killed by me." This is the only wake-up super that I've seen in the entire footage, in the entire roster that's been announced so far. What's a wake-up super? Well, I'm glad you asked. After Frieza is knocked down, you can hold the right trigger to perform a super as you get up. Now, this isn't something cheap to do. It also costs 3 gauges, which is some of the most expensive stuff in the game. But it does do a ton of damage if you hit your opponent. And finally, we can also call this a super, or we could call it something different, like a transformation. But Golden Frieza, the only transformation announced so far in the game, also costs 3 gauges of meter, and is simply performed by doing a quarter circle backwards and hitting the right trigger. Frieza gets more powerful, all his abilities are more powerful, but it does have a time limit, and Frieza will be vulnerable once that time limit expires, so do be careful when you use it. And those are the supers for Frieza. Let's move on to Cell. Cell only has 2 super abilities, is a relatively easy character to learn the supers. He has a ton of specials, but that's a topic for another video. The first one is Energy Field, costs 1 gauge, and you can perform it by doing a quarter circle forward motion, followed by either right bumper or right trigger. Energy Field has a limited range, so make sure you're close to your adversary when you use it, but you can hit the opponent whether he's in front or behind you. Just make sure you're not too far, otherwise you're gonna miss it. And his more expensive super is the Solar Kamehameha, which in the anime he said could wipe the entire Earth's solar system. Now for this you gotta use 3 gauges, and I haven't found any official footage out there of this super except this guy on Twitter called Coogie Please. So thank you very much, Coogie Please, for uploading this to Twitter. It looks badass. It's a big ass Kamehameha. We're gonna see a lot more like that down the video. But yeah, looks cool. And finally, the last baddie we have announced is Majin Buu. Majin Buu only has 2 supers, just like Cell, 1 cheap, 1 more expensive. The cheap one costs 1 gauge, and it's named after a quote, which is, "You know what? I hate you." And it's basically Buu in an explosion of anger and rage. Again, this is simply performed by doing a quarter circle forward, followed by either the right bumper or right trigger. This has an insane range, unlike Cell's Energy Field. It seems that it's much easier to hit an opponent. In fact, it might be the easiest super to hit an opponent with, because it pretty much just covers the entire screen. And his more expensive super is You're My Snack Now, which of course is our favorite ability from Majin Buu. He turns people into cookies. You spend 3 gauges to do this by doing quarter circle backwards, followed by either the right bumper or the right trigger, and you turn your opponent into a cookie, and then you eat him. Perfect. Let's move on to the good guys, starting with my personal favorite, Vegeta. He only has 2 supers in this game, at least so far. The first one is the Big Bang Attack. Quarter circle forward, followed by right bumper or right trigger. Pretty easy to do. It only costs 1 gauge of meter, and it's a giant ball that deals a ton of damage. Yeah, make sure the opponent is in front of you, because he doesn't hit backwards, I'll tell you that. And his more expensive super costs 3 gauges, and you know what it is. It's the Final Flash by Super Vegeta, quarter circle backwards, followed by right bumper or the right trigger. Huge key wave explodes in front of Vegeta, and everything is blown to bits, assuming once again the opponent is not behind him. Next up, Gohan. Gohan has an interesting moveset, and his supers, they won't disappoint you. His cheapest super costs 1 gauge of meter, and it's the no motion Kamehameha. So basically Gohan is just there standing still, and all of a sudden he fires the super Kamehameha into the air. This is very important to note, because the ability becomes somewhat situational. You can only really hit an opponent with this ability if he is in the air. Now, this being a Dragon Ball game, the opponents are going to spend a lot of time in the air, so I'm sure you you will find enough situations to use this. But with so many energy waves that are shot forwards, this may be something that you need to get used to over time. So yeah, keep that in mind. Gohan Super No Motion Kamehameha, it goes up. And then we have the iconic father-son Kamehameha. Quarter circle backwards followed by the right bumper or right trigger. Costs 3 gauges, but there's a twist to this. If you hold any button while the super is being performed, it will spend 2 more gauges and it will go at full power. So you can spend up to 5 gauges of meter in this super, as Maximilian Dude showcased on his YouTube channel. Great channel for fighting games if you're into it, seriously. Go check him out. And finally, the hero of Dragon Ball, Goku. He has 3 supers announced so far, at least. The Super Kamehameha, you know, pretty straightforward, quarter circle forwards, followed by the right bumper. Shoots a Kamehameha wave. Now, what's interesting about the Super Kamehameha is that you can change it by pressing up or down on the D-pad. I bet it works with the analog stick as well if you're one of those players. So you can play some mind games with the super, actually, like make your opponent think you're going to shoot it upwards, but actually you're going to shoot it forwards, or you're going to do it in midair, but instead of shooting it forwards, you're going to shoot it downwards. You can pretty much direct it wherever you want while Goku is charging his super. That's incredibly interesting, but we're not done. He's got another super that only spends 1 gauge, and that's the instant transmission Kamehameha. Goku just vanishes, appears behind the opponent, and shoots a Kamehameha. Very hard to predict, very hard to block, because the wind-up, the animation is the exact same as the Super Kamehameha, so you never know if he's actually going to vanish or not. And if he vanishes, you gotta block in the opposite direction. That's gonna be tough to predict, at least for me. I'm sorry, I'm not good at fighting games. Again, no footage from this except from our lovely Cookie Please on Twitter. Thank you very much for uploading this stuff while you were at E3. You are a lifesaver, man. And finally, Goku's expensive super is the Meteor Smash. Now, the Meteor Smash, I've seen 2 variants of it. You can do it by doing a quarter circle backwards and pressing either the right bumper or right trigger, which is the same as a lot of other supers. But I've seen the Meteor Smash done where Goku starts by transforming into Super Saiyan 3 and doing the whole thing, finishing with a Super Kamehameha. But I've also seen him do it as a Super Saiyan 2 or a regular Super Saiyan. I can never tell the difference, can you? Now, Goku doesn't have a transformation that's been announced yet. His Super Saiyan 3 does not work like the Golden Frieza that we see in the gameplay demos. So his Super Saiyan 3 is purely the animation for the Super. Now, why doesn't he transform sometimes? Is it just the difference between pressing the right bumper or the right trigger? Maybe, but I can't really tell until I get my hands on the game. That'd be cool though. It's just a little visual difference depending on which button you press, and the gameplay implications are the same. So that's kind of awesome. I like that touch. And those are all the supers for all the characters announced so far. Of course, the game is only 20% done so far, so a lot of this could change. So far, I'm loving how simple it is to perform every single move. They could easily have some more complicated motions for some of the most powerful supers, but I think when you get to more advanced players, they can all just do that regularly with a lot of safety. So you're just alienating some of the beginner audience. And I don't think that's a good thing in Dragon Ball games. So let the beginners get in with these easier to perform moves. Don't scare them with complicated move sets and move lists, because the game seems to have enough depth already to satisfy those more advanced and competitive players. So I hope this simplicity in command input stays until the final game. I really enjoy it a lot. But what about you? You guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. By the way, they're announcing some new characters for this game this Wednesday, and we'll make a video about that towards the end of the week. I want to go into some roster speculation, see what they're announcing to kind of get the vibe of what the complete roster will be, and then we'll talk a bit more about it. But in the meantime, let me know what characters you'd love to see in this game. If you're into Dragon Ball games, you can click right here to watch the top 10 best Dragon Ball games of all time. If not, if you're in the mood for something else, you can also click right here. And hey, if not, you can leave me a like at least. Or both, if you're feeling in a good mood, if you're feeling generous. But as always, thank you very much for watching. My name's Globku, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!